So if you want to join me in the Bible, we're going to be in John chapter 2. And we are going to be looking at a story that we read in our Bible reading just this last week. So I don't know if you guys are, in fact, we read it on Friday. It was in our Bible reading on Friday. If you have not grabbed one of our bookmarks yet, we'll be doing this for the rest of the year. We're going to read John all the way through the Gospel of John between now and the end of the year, between now and Christmas. So grab a bookmark and join us, because we'll also, just like today, we'll refer back to our reading and pull a story from the reading and look at it together. So we're in John chapter 2 today. Our memory verse comes from John chapter 8. I am the light of the world. I love this right here. We just finished a series called Let's Follow God, and now our memory verse says, whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. We're going to call our Advent series together that very name, the light of life. And as we look at Advent, there are four major themes in Advent: joy, hope, love, and peace. Today, we're going to look at joy. And we're going to look, like I said, there we go, at the story in John chapter 2 called The Wedding Miracle. Now, this is where we get very interactive. I'm curious, raise your hand if you're already familiar with the story. You don't have to open a Bible. You don't have to go look it up. You know what happens. Okay, we got a few hands up in the air. So remind me, what do you remember about the story? Raise your hand. What do you remember about the story? Aaron, you're first. Water to wine. That's right. That is what happens in the story. What else do you remember about the story? Brianna. It was red wine. That's right. Okay. Oh.
Mary asked Jesus to do it, and he said no. And then she pushed again, and then did it.
Mary asked Jesus to do it, and he said no, and then she pushed again, and then he did it. What else do you remember? Yes, Miss Autumn. Yes, they ran out of the wine, and that's what got them in the situation. What else do you remember, Mike? What's that? They broke tradition by bringing the best wine out last. What else do you remember? Yes, Miss Lard. It is the first miracle recorded. Very good. What else do you remember? The reason why I'm doing this, obviously, in a sermon format, it's like all download and not much interaction. But I thought, man, since we're here today around the table and going to gather on this story for a second, it's fun to take something familiar and get a look at it all together. Is there any other detail that you might remember from the story before we dive in? Anybody? Yeah. Right. Yes, there could be shame involved for the family if they had run out of wine. That's right. Yes, sir. Yeah, there's probably frustration, for sure. All right, well, let's do this. Let's look at the story. This is John chapter, I believe it's chapter 2. I don't know why I wrote John chapter 1. It's chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. On the third day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman," he said, "why do you involve me?" I want to pause there for just a second because in the original reading, what's actually being communicated there, Jesus is saying literally, it's not my problem and it's not your problem. And not like in a condescending way or it's just very objectively, this has little to do with us, right? There's like a kind of a separation created. So like, he's like, hey, like that's their problem, not our. Why are you involving us? And then he goes on to say, my hour has not yet come. And then his mother says to the servants, do whatever he tells you. And yes, we have written a lot, which is funny. We're looking at 5 verses, right? And there's a lot of story that we've written into these 5 verses as we look back over time. When the simple matter of the fact is, there is what we read here in verse 5, this understanding of Mary that Jesus can do something about the situation. He can. In her heart, she believes he can. What I would love to hear from us next is, from all over the room, how would you fill in the blank? He can blank. In your own life, in your own experience, in your own understanding of Jesus. I see that hand in the back. Provide. Say that again? Provide. He can provide. Amen. Thank you. Another one. Yes, ma'am. He can protect. Amen. Is there another one? Yes, I see. Yes, Miss Melody.
Do miracles.
He can do miracles. Yes, Seth.
Heal.
He can heal. Yes, is it Bryn?
He can love us no matter what.
He can love us no matter what. Thank you. Andrew. What? He can relate. Amen. Any others? Yes. He can do anything. Thank you, Aaron. Let's keep rolling. So in verse 6, nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind that are used by the Jews for ceremonial washing. Now, each hold 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water. So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet. And they did so. Now, here's the most interesting detail that I learned personally in studying this story again this week. The benefit of the author including the pots and their size. So many commentators have said, well, man, they've tried to link the whole, because they were ceremonial washing jars, that this is a proverbial or metaphorical like foreshadowing of his ceremonial or like soul cleansing washing. One commentator that I read this week simply said, look, by using this detail, we know how big the miracle is, which is really fun. So we see like 6 stone pots, right? And it even includes the number of gallons, anywhere from, what was it each? 20 to 30 each, right? So that's 6 times 20 is, I know we got some mathematicians. 6 times 20 is?
120.
There it is. 6 times 30 is? 180. So somewhere in that ballpark. Now, just look at this for a second, right? We can look at 6 stone pots, okay, but like what about milk jugs, right? So that's a 14 by 5. What's 14 times 5? 70. So that's just on one screen we have 70 gallons, right? On both screens. That's 140 gallons. Could you imagine 140 milk jugs? Another fun detail about the story. In just like a few syllables, Jesus says, hey, go fill them up, and they fill them up. It takes like 2 sentences for that to happen. Could you imagine fetching water of 140 gallons? Like, that would take some time, right? Nevertheless, so he did. They did that. So they did that, and then before you know it, all of them turn into wine. One main takeaway I want us to tuck in our hearts as we go home today is this. Like, what Jesus does, he does abundantly. What Jesus does, he does abundantly. Here's my second favorite detail that I was reminded of this week. Check this out, y'all. Jesus didn't do anything. He's certainly responsible for the miracle. But let's look back again at the verses we just read. Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars." And they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." And they did so. Jesus didn't do anything. This whole thing happened because of the voluntary participation and obedience of the servants here at the party. The master of the banquet tasted the water that had then been turned into wine, and he did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. And then he called the bridegroom aside, and he said, "Man, everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had enough to drink. But you have saved the best until now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. As we look at joy, as we look at this story, it's so wonderful. My favorite part, I keep saying that, but this is another fun detail, is the master of the banquet had no idea what was going on, and yet he is the one who validates the miracle. Unbeknownst to what's going on, his reaction is what says this thing actually happened. This story, though, is a beautiful story of perhaps an acronym that you're familiar with when it comes to joy. And that is, there is Jesus, there are others, and there is you. In this story, it is the story of a bride and groom whose family or their situation was no more wine. That was their predicament. Jesus, being on the scene, made himself a part of the situation, and he activated others to bless them. And I just want to say, man, as we wrap up today for this little part of it, man, your obedience, your yes, could be the catalyst of another person's miracle moment. We're constantly in this wonderful connective cycle of Jesus, others, and ourselves, or Jesus, others, and you. Others might be the ones who act and who respond and who move and bless you. Or you might be the one who acts and responds and moves and blesses them. But the Lord is always at work bringing this wonderful joy. And who knows, the next time you hear or sense an invitation from the Spirit, your obedience, your yes, could be the catalyst of another person's miracle moment. Amen? Amen.